You can see an image that Facebook Research Labs revealed a few months ago of a working prototype of a VR headset. And rather than it being absolutely huge, which I've got one here, rather than this being, this huge thing, it literally is about that size. It's about the depth of, it's slightly bigger than a pair of Ray-Bans.
I can't wait to see where VR takes us in the future. I think it's going to be really interesting.
And you're watching each other dance around and do these crazy kind of moves as you're trying to get the highest score. And it's actually really entertaining to watch Dad prancing around.
I'm really looking forward to talking to Patrick. We've got lots of things that we can talk about. I guess my main thing that I think would be great to hear from you, Patrick, is just how you got into the industry in the first place, and what's going on with nDreams at the moment, and what are you doing right now?
How did I get into the industry? I did computer science and cybernetics at university. Always loved computers. Had a Dragon 32 when I was sort of 11 years old, and did a bit of programming and thought very hard about what I wanted to do. Played a game called Doom that you probably remember very well when I was at uni, and kind of fell in love with that and went, wow, games are really cool. And that'd be so much more fun than programming in the city doing spreadsheets or, software. So decided to go join a games company. Started at a company called Codemasters as their 30th employee, I think. Up in Leamington Spa, who actually recently just did a great exit to EA, you may know, and had a great time at Codemasters. Worked up to being kind of head of business development there, signing games from other developers, and then moved to a company called SCI. Was creative director there for a while. Creative director at IDOS for a year and a half. Made a bit of money through some share options, and decided, unlike my friends who were buying sports cars, I'd invest it in my own studio because I always wanted to be my own boss. I always wanted to make my own decisions. So started nDreams in 2006, and then have sort of grown nDreams up from just literally me in a small office. We made a big pivot at the end of 2013 to virtual reality, fell in love with the VR headsets, really thought there was something very special and very incredible about the power of VR. And since then, we've been completely focused on VR up till now. How are things going? It's crazy. The games industry has been in such a high for the last year, actually, in terms of sales and M&A that's going on and opportunities. And certainly in VR, we're seeing that as well. Virtual reality has taken a while to get going, but actually it's properly commercial now, and there's still so much room left to go. So we're seeing all sorts of interesting opportunities coming our way, all sorts of great conversations. Games are doing well. We're moving into third-party publishing, which means we're going to be publishing other people's games as well as our own, which is really exciting. And just an awful lot going on. It's absolutely madness, which is brilliant.
Yeah, you mentioned the sort of general excitement about the games industry, and I think we've seen that across the board. I've seen it with a lot of the companies that I work with, both through Mercia and other sort of companies that I help as a non-exec. The industry's just gone bonkers, and it is. I think we're seeing that final sort of legitimization of video games. Like 10 years ago, when we were pitching for trying to raise money, for example, and you'll have come across this yourself, I'm sure, a lot of investors just didn't want to know about video games. Yeah. And now, a lot of people are clamoring to try and get into it because they realize that it's a fairly stable sort of place to invest if you're worried about sort of downturns in the economy. So it's like normally when we see a recession or a downturn in the economy, the games industry is normally quite buoyant.
Yeah,
because people tend to game more basically when they're at home, and that's been accelerated by COVID. But even before COVID, we were predicted to see some amazing uplift. The figures, it was PwC released some figures showing that total games industry valuation was going to be over 300 billion by 2024 and things like that. And it was going to happen. It's just that COVID has kind of accelerated it. Definitely interesting you talk about VR. I think VR is a topic that comes up a lot in my circles, and I guess I'd be really interested to ask you if you think that VR is here to stay. Do you think that do you think we've seen the kind of bumps and now it's going to become a mainstream platform? I'd love to get your insight into that.
Yeah, I certainly do think it's here to stay. We're massive believers in VR, and we're lucky in that we see what the headset manufacturers are doing a few years ahead of time. So we get a pretty good idea about what's coming in the future, and that's very exciting. There's an image actually. If you search Facebook Labs headset, you can see an image that Facebook Research Labs revealed a few months ago of a working prototype of a VR headset. And rather than it being absolutely huge, which I've got one here, rather than this being this huge thing, it literally is about that size. It's about the depth of. It's slightly bigger than a pair of Ray-Bans. Now that's not consumer yet, but that's where the technology is coming. So we're super excited about where that's going. We think that as 5G becomes much more widespread everywhere, it will be possible to stream VR from the cloud. And suddenly that means that these headsets don't need to have GPUs and CPUs and memory and cooling and all that kind of stuff. It can be so much lighter, so much cheaper, so much more comfortable. So I think you're going to see a few big iterations in terms of hardware design, and we're seeing sales growing really well. So the Quest 2 is massively outselling the first Quest headset. All of our back catalogue is up massively. Sony have just announced a new headset coming, which is really exciting. There are other headsets on the way from big companies. Lots and lots of rumors about Apple. They've been hiring VR engineers like mad. So it's an exciting time, and definitely I think it's going to become a very big. It's got a huge amount to grow, and I think it will become a mainstream tech. Doesn't mean that everybody will use VR for games. There's always going to be a place for different types of gaming, and if you're in the Starbucks queue, whenever we're allowed back out to Starbucks, you're not going to want to stick a VR glasses on necessarily. You'll be playing on your phone, but VR headsets, when they're done well, are superb. They're so immersive. The emotions that they generate in players are so strong compared to traditional gaming that I think they're going to be a really, really big part of the future.
That's great. I mean, I found similar myself. We've got a headset at home. I play with the kids, but it's still at the moment, it's still quite a sort of an isolated experience. So if you're going to play a game, for example, I was playing the Elite game by Frontier.
Yeah.
That's been out a while now, but it's still great in VR. Yeah. Flying spacecraft in VR is one of the best experiences. And I think games like that, and also survival horror games in VR are fantastic. And some of the sort of more, Maze Theory did that BBC VR game, which was quite interesting. But I think then we'll go downstairs and we'll play Luigi's Mansion on the screen with the kids, because we can all play and we can pass the controller around, and it's a bit more sort of sociable to do it that way. But
we're seeing some of that actually with PlayStation VR. One of the things I'd be very keen to do is to make sure that you can see on the screen what players are doing, so that you can actually interact. And there have been games that allow non-VR players to interact with the VR player in a sort of fun family way. Also, we're seeing games like Beat Saber on Quest, which has been phenomenally successful. I think it's done $180 million of revenue. It's the biggest VR game to date. And they're very much played as a group quite often. You'll have a go. It's a 2-3 minute song. You'll get the score. You'll pass it to your brother or your sister or your mum, and they'll try and beat your score. And you're watching each other dance around and do these crazy kind of moves as you're trying to get the highest score. And it's actually really entertaining to watch Dad prancing around. But it's a really good fun family thing, even though you can't see what they're doing in terms of the headset. So there's a bit of that. But the nice thing about VR is that massively multiplayer, virtual worlds, all that kind of stuff is just as easy to do on VR as it is on PC or console or mobile. So there's we're starting to see some big multiplayer games coming. Those kind of games tend to be more expensive, so it's really just a factor of VR growing as an industry and the budget's growing that allow that to happen. But that's definitely coming, and I think you'll see much more multiplayer experiences coming.
I think you're right, and that whole, I've seen a lot of fairly hefty investments go into companies trying to sort of reach for that metaverse kind of a game where it's a fully immersive world. And I think that immersive world can't happen without VR. Really, it has to be VR. The main thing is going to be, how do we get, as an industry, how do we get VR players to be able to play alongside screen players, so that there's no disparity, and they're able to all play together without feeling that they're excluded one or the other. Because sometimes it's just different people have different platforms. But so many interesting challenges with VR now. And I'd agree with you in that the headsets have really come a long way. I mean, 5 years ago, we were looking at things with massive amounts of cabling and huge screens and all the rest of it. And now we're down to pretty streamlined kit, and it's only going to get more so.
Yeah, I think Oculus have been very smart with the Quest 2, because so instantaneous. It's about the friction points needed to sort of get going with something like the PlayStation VR, which I love, but there's a lot of plugging in, there's a lot of charging, there's quite a lot of points before you go, I want to play VR, to when you're actually in there. Whereas the nice thing about, a Quest is you literally stick it on your head, press the on button, and it's there. And you can do it anywhere in your house, and it just works. So you're in playing within 5 seconds. And that lack of friction really makes a big difference. And I think that's one of the best things about the design of that headset. And I think you'll see that coming, with new headsets in the future, even more so.
I can't wait to see where VR takes us in the
Yeah.
future. I think it's going to be really interesting. I've got some questions about your journey and your career that I'd like to ask you about. And I guess one of them is like, when you founded nDreams, and I'm fascinated by this because I also founded a business and built it up, and I know how hard that journey is. What was your original vision, and how much did it kind of change over the years? How is nDreams exactly as you pictured it would be in 2006, or has it diversified? Did you have to pivot on the way?
Yeah, no, it isn't the same as when I started. It's kind of is. So I always knew I wanted to be doing kind of cutting edge games in breaking new ground. So at the time, it was, the very first thing we tried to do was doing casual games for female audiences, which weren't really being done. And we had a great demo. We were selling that, and then we saw PlayStation Home, this crazy virtual world on a PlayStation console, and that was about to launch. And we saw them talking about it and went, I know, we'll do this mad, really ambitious alternate reality game where you play in the world and then you go to the real world, and there's adverts on poster sites in the real world, and then there's events that happen where limos turn up, and there's websites and videos, and it all links together in this crazy story. It was a stupidly ambitious idea, and Sony went, wow, yeah, let's go do it. And so we kind of fell into doing that. But it was always about breaking into new ground, trying to do new tech, trying to learn new stuff, not doing repeat and follow to other companies. So I think we're still there. We're absolutely doing that in VR. We're definitely breaking ground. We're doing games that no one's done before. We're definitely one of the top 2 or 3 VR developers and publishers in the world, I think, now. So we're definitely doing that, and we're also keeping an eye on cloud and AR and some of the other areas that are very similar and very close to VR. So we're definitely breaking new ground, but we didn't know about VR, the VR revolution then. I'd played a VR headset in 1996, I think, in the Trocadero, and thought, wow, this is really cool. It's a bit rubbish tech-wise, but there's something special about this. But, until I saw a guy called Palmer Luckey from Oculus, demoed me this very early headset, I suddenly went, wow, this is actually feasible now. For the first time, you can do this and it feels comfortable. And so I think from that point in 2013, that was it. That pivoted everything for me, because I felt that this was so exciting and was going to be so revolutionary. And I still feel that way. Some people initially thought, oh, it's a bit of a gimmick, especially if you tried some of the early cardboard headsets, which were absolutely awful and didn't do VR properly, and probably did a bit of a disservice, I think, to VR. But with a proper VR headset where you can move and tilt your head in every axis, and you've got proper hand controls, and you can reach out and grab stuff, there's something really magical about it, and that changed everything for us, really. I just fell in love with VR.
That's a really bold move, though, as well. I mean, to take an existing business that has a vision, and then to say, actually, we're going to pivot and do something else. What would you say kept you going through the motivation, to keep going and sort of drive that pivot through? Because I bet there were probably some people in your world and in your organization who doubted that pivot at the time, and
it didn't help that we were profitable before we did the pivot. So we were going, but we were a big fish in a small pond. So we'd kind of grown as much as we could where we were. So I kind of knew we needed to set off in a new direction, and also it wasn't as fun as I wanted it to be. I love doing the unknown and trying to do new stuff and really trying to do very, very high quality. And we weren't quite where I wanted to be, even though we were, profitable and quite successful. So I don't know, it wasn't too bad. We had some savings. We spent those, and we realized that we kind of needed a VC to support us. Very fortunate we found Mercia, and have grown with them over the years since that point. But it's been, it was scary. It was a big step, but I absolutely felt my instinct was, this is the right move. This is absolutely the right place for us. And actually, fortunately, the people around us believed that. And now we are, nearly 8 years later. It's taken a while, but you know what? It's getting there now. It's taken a while, but we've learned so much. We've built so much great tech, and we've got such a great team that I think it's been worth it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've done great, and you've just released Fract.
Yeah, it's coming out in a few months actually. So we just
All
announced
right.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's a
Yeah.
lot of excitement about that actually on PlayStation VR. It's a very crazy, full-on game. Doesn't take itself too seriously. Really, really like it. And then we've got lots of other announcements to come out this year as well. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, so it's fun. It's there's so much happening at the moment.
Yeah, and you had Phantom Cover Ops,
Yeah.
which great game, did really well. How's that going? Are you still supporting that at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're hopefully we'll take it to other platforms in the future. We're very proud of it. Sales are phenomenally good, still well above targets, which is great. And the review scores and user ratings are really good as well. And Oculus have been brilliant with us. They've been great partners. They've helped us push it. We put it into sales and support it and do deals, and actually really, really pleased with how it's coming along. The long tail in VR is really good. If you've got a good game, you can continue to sell, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the line. And that's lovely. There's nothing better than having a big back catalogue of games that keep on selling. And yeah, really pleased with how Phantom's doing, and hopefully we'll do more with it.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think it's the thing we've seen across the whole games industry is how, back in the day, you used to make the game, you would stick it in a box, it would go on the shelf, it would get sold. And once it was done, and you didn't touch it again. And maybe in a few years, you might do a sequel or whatever. Whereas now, the tail end of a game can last a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, we've got to really work games, and we've done that with a title called Shooty Fruity actually. So we launched that, I think it's probably 3 years ago since it first came out, but it's come out on multiple headsets. We took it to the arcade, so people that go into VR arcades can play it as well. And we've done all sorts of things from it. Brought it to Quest fairly recently, and actually, that's an IP that just keeps generating money and keeps growing, which is great. So it's hugely profitable for us, and I'm sure we'll still continue to do more from it because it's a great solid game. It's been out a while, but it's still a very fun game that people really enjoy playing. So I think it's about maximizing the return. When you invested a lot of money in a game, you really want to try and maximize the return on that, and that's really bringing it to as many platforms as possible, and really you using it well actually.
When you have to support the tail end of it, I won't say have to support, but you know what I mean? Like normally you release the game and then you realize that it's getting a lot of traction. And then you have to kind of like sort of plan how you're going to keep that game alive. Does that plan exist before you ship the game? Or do you ship the game and then kind of like go, okay, this is how well it's doing and this is why it's doing well. Let's embellish on that. How sort of pre-planned is it versus?
It's a bit of both. So we definitely have plans for how we're going to support the game for the sort of 6 months at least post-launch, but also once the game's out, things may change. So if a particular feature resonates or people love something or a particular platform does well, then you may well tweak your plans. And obviously, if you're in a lucky enough scenario to have a huge hit, then suddenly, you throw all sorts of stuff at it, and maybe that takes over what you're doing, and you maybe let a few other things drift into the background to support the hit. So, I think it does depend, but you certainly want a good 6 month post-launch plan. And I think what we'll see in VR over the next few years is more what we call games as a service titles. So games that are not fire and forget, you launch it and you're done, but more where you hopefully build the audience over the period of 2-3 years, and actually got more people playing it in 12 months after launch than you did at launch, and then more people 2 years later. That's something that's done phenomenally well in the mobile space. It's doing pretty well in PC and console now, and once the user base is big enough, I think we'll see more of those kind of games, and maybe paid games with microtransactions that you can keep playing and doing, and we build that audience and community alongside the game. They might even be free to play, where you play the game for free and pay if you're enjoying it.
I mean, that definitely seems to be the holy grail in the sort of investment space at the moment, is those games as a service titles where you're acquiring those users are hopefully staying with you, and then you can keep drip feeding them content and keep the game alive, basically keep the IP going. We saw, I think one of the great sort of success stories of the last 5 years was definitely No Man's Sky for that. They've done really well at sort of building a mass of players and then taking them on a journey. But even before that, we had things like EVE Online, and that was like 10, 15 years ago now. And that was kind of a bit of a moment where the industry sort of looked at a product and went, wow, these guys have been running this for years and it's been doing really well for them. Speaking of other products you've seen in other studios, is there anyone you've sort of looked to as being a sort of a role model in the industry over the years? Anyone you've particularly admired?
In terms of companies, so many. I mean, there's so many great game developers doing it tends to be really high quality studios. So, people like Guerrilla, who make some amazing games for Sony, or Naughty Dog, who do some brilliant, they know what they do and they do it really well. Really liked Telltale for the first few years, with their adventure games. I think they did them really well and told stories fantastically. Um, there's all sorts of companies. I'm quite a big admirer of some of the listed companies at the moment. Companies like Team 17 are doing a phenomenal job. I know Debbie there; she's absolutely brilliant. At driving that company, and they publish indie developers and do a great job for the developers and for them. So I really like what they're doing. um there's so many great studios out there, and all you can do is just keep your head down and try and make the best games you can, and hope you one day you might be in the same breath as them.
I'm sure you guys will be, to be honest. I think you're doing really well. Every time I see a product come out from you, it seems to be that one step above the next thing you did before. And that's the key thing I kind of look for when I'm thinking about a quality business, and it is that constant desire to do better than you did last
Yeah.
time, and push something forward. And I think you guys have got that. And I know some of your team as well. You've got some really good people on the team.
No, excellent.
And I think, yeah, I think you're going to do great. And definitely the VR space seems to have hit its stride now, as
Yeah,
the
I think so.
hardware gets better, which is great. Just a little bit about your sort of role as the CEO, and how you keep going. What's your sort of main motivation? What do you want to achieve in that role?
Um, I've got so many. I think most important thing is I want to have fun along the way. If I ever wake up in the morning and I'm just not enjoying it, I'm miserable. That's a really bad sign. But fortunately, 13 years on since, or 14 years on since we started nDreams, I'm still, well, even more so now. Just waking up with a spring in my step because there's so much happening, and I'm so proud of the team, and really excited about where VR is going, all the headsets that are coming out. So I think enjoying the journey is really important. Where do I want to get to? I would love to build a big UK tech company. I think that would be amazing. That would be my dream. I think that's the big audacious goal: £1 billion. Big UK tech company, one of the best games publishers. Specializing in VR, doing that really well. That would be a big audacious goal. It'd be fantastic to get there, but who knows? I just want to, I want to have fun, and we want to make great games. We want to be people. We want to be proud of everything we do. We want to look back, and we do that. Phantom and Shooty Fruity are great examples. So look back on those games. We're really proud of them, and really proud of Phantom. It's a great game. No one can ever take that away from us, and hopefully we can keep making better and better games that we're proud of. And if we do that, we should be all right.
Yeah. Well, I think that aspiration you have is not unachievable, really. I mean, we've seen some fantastic. I mean, you mentioned Team 17, but we've
Yeah.
seen some great listings over the last 5 years of UK games companies floating on the market. Team 17. I mean, gosh, they only launched, I think it was just after Christmas 2017. It was at the beginning of 2018.
Yeah.
They floated on the market, and already they're at like £8 a share or something like that, and they're doing really well. And the appetite, I think, on the market at the moment for games companies has really matured
Yeah.
and really come of age. So I think if you keep doing what you're doing and doing it well, there's no reason why you shouldn't eventually get there. I think it's good to have a big vision as well.
Yeah, yeah. You got to aim for the stars, haven't you?
I guess one of my questions as well is, I mean, where do you think the future of gaming is? What's exciting you about the next 5 years?
um, Well, obviously, part of me would say VR. I'm really excited by what's going to be possible with the new types of headsets and the new experiences. You'll see new technologies coming in. Gaze tracking is something a lot of headset manufacturers have talked about, where you actually follow the eyes and you can see where not just the headset, but the eyes within the headset, and track where they're looking. That's going to be really interesting. That opens up lots of possibilities. Outside of VR, I think AR is going to be interesting. I think it's not going to be such a big gaming platform, but I think AR is going to be huge in terms of apps, and I do suspect we may well see ourselves in 5-10 years time using a pair of glasses to do everything, as opposed to one of these things. That would not surprise me at all. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with AR, and there will be a gaming element to that as well. We're keeping quite a close watch on that. Cloud gaming, I think, is really interesting. I suspect that there is a big shift going to come in the next 3 to 5 years in the games industry, which is cloud gaming, where you'll see Google and Microsoft and probably Tencent, who seem to have a finger in every single pie,
Yeah.
having their own cloud solutions and streaming games. And then it becomes a little bit like the Netflix, Apple, Amazon battle that we've seen in television, where it's all about having great content. And so I think there may well be another big round of M&A, as they all want to own EA or Activision, or some of the big players, to get the exclusive content for their streaming channel. So that wouldn't surprise me. I definitely think that streaming is the future. It's not quite there yet, but it makes so much sense not buying a console and then it going out of date over 3 years, and why pay for the hardware when you can do it in the cloud? The servers, constantly getting updated. It's super quick. You can jump into a game without any loading. You don't have to download. You don't have to do updates. And even more impressively, you can click on a link on TikTok or Instagram and just go straight into the game. So it ties in with social media incredibly well. So we're quite bullish on cloud gaming, and I think that's going to be a very interesting space over the next few years.
But also, it almost alters the very nature of the internet as well, because rather than there being a complete separation between internet and games, you end up with that situation of certain currently internet experiences could very well be immersed in a game world, if you know what I mean. And so that, like you say, clicking from TikTok into a game, you could also have certain websites that have certain parts of the site which are gamified and immersive.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It blends the line.
It's going to be fascinating. I play a lot of Minecraft with my daughter, and it's still a phenomenally successful game, Minecraft, and millions and millions and millions of people playing it. But the idea of being able to make a beautiful Minecraft world and then go do some work in it, and I could get up some screens and do a bit of bit of some spreadsheets or answer some emails in this amazing world I've created in VR. That's exciting. I love the idea of that.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess one thing that's close to my heart, and I'll sort of make this my last question, I think, is obviously the creative process. I came from a creative background. I was an artist and a designer before starting my own company. And I'm always interested to know where the ideas come from and how you go from sort of blank canvas to final product. And, I guess how do you come up with the ideas for these titles? What's your team's sort of process?
So the first thing I'd say is that I often get people saying to me, "Oh, it must be so hard to come up with ideas. You must kind of grasp them closely." It's like, no, we've got so many blooming ideas and design ideas and things that the challenge is not coming up with something really interesting. It's making a game. It's getting the funding. It's getting it all together. It's finding the right way, the right business model. It's getting the game out. So we have so many ideas. We're fortunate in that we've actually built a very creative team. So one of the things we look for from us, particularly with the design team, but actually in other areas as well, is really, really smart people who are innovative, who come up with new ideas. So literally we'll just sit down and we'll quite often, almost always, there's some sort of brief. So it might just be, you've got to make a game for this particular headset that has these new features that are very exciting. This is the kind of budget, and what kind of things can we do in VR that really, it starts with what's fun in VR. It starts with what we call the gameplay mechanics. What are you actually going to do in the game? How are you going to interact? What's the core? What's going to make it fun? So quite often we do prototypes. So with Phantom, we tried lots of fun things out. One of them was canoeing in VR. What would that be like? Kind of feels like it worked quite well. We tried out a little prototype and went, oh, do you know, that's so much fun. That's such a laugh. And actually it feels really authentic. There's something there. What do we make from that then if we wanted to use that as a centerpiece because it's so much fun? What a great sort of foundation. Well, we could do a canoe Olympic type slalom game. We could absolutely do that. But how do we make it a bit more fun and edgy? And then we realized that actually the sort of special forces soldiers would often canoe into enemy territory because it was super quiet, and built a game around that. But it came from that core of what's fun. That's really important. So we'll do lots of prototyping. We'll try lots of stuff out. And sometimes things you think will be fun in VR aren't. And sometimes things that you think, oh, I'm not sure if that's going to work, are just, oh, this is so good.
No, I completely, I think what you just said about having a lot of ideas, that's what I've always found is most game studios have a surplus of ideas.
Yeah.
The problem is actually how do you sort of corral all of these creative minds into working together in the right way? Because otherwise everyone's just pulling in different directions with all sorts of crazy ideas that they have, and it can be quite hard to do that. So you must have some good managers in the business who are able to sort of set some goals and sort of harness that creativity into something.
Yeah, we've got a good production team actually. So I think it's getting that balance right. If you just had a team of creatives without the producers to go, right, come on guys, sort this out. You've got a deadline, you've got some time scales. This is the brief, you need to get this done by, and actually writing everything down, it would just be absolute chaos. It'd be like herding cats. So we're fortunate, and we've got a great production team, a great design team who do the concepting, and then a very big art team, doing all the art side, and a fantastic code team. And development tends to be split mainly into those four areas. We've also got a little bit of writing, bit of audio, who do a great job too, but primarily it's those four areas. And the producers are it's incredibly important, the production team, just making sure things come out on time, on budget, that people are doing what they need to do, because there's so many dependencies in big complicated games, and each of our games are getting more complicated as the budgets go up.
Great stuff. Well, but I could chat about this stuff all day, to be honest. I think, and also in the absence of being able to sit in a pub and actually chat about games, it's been great to talk to you about this stuff over Zoom. But thanks a lot for your time, Patrick. It's been really awesome talking to you.
My pleasure. Lovely to speak to you, Ron. Thank you.
Good stuff. Cheers.